If you're a hardcore nature defender, please close this video right now and go see the world through rose-tinted glasses. Gone already? Then let's talk about how it's time for us to step in and, so to speak, wipe out a few animals. A couple of million or billion. And no, it's not another invasive species. And no, we won't be eating them. Today I stumbled upon a very interesting topic. But once again, I repeat, this video is for people who see the world realistically. First coffee, and let's dive right in. And of course, an unobtrusive reminder to not forget to hit the like button. Last year, several alarming statements were made. Farmers who raise mollusks in the waters near Italy's Polesine region said one of the richest lagoons has become completely sterile. There's no life left there, only blue crabs. Environmentalists repeated to farmers there are so many blue crabs in Italian waters that crabs themselves have nothing to eat. The crabs are starting to eat each other, but it doesn't reduce their numbers. Along the northern coast of the Adriatic Sea in Italy, workers were pulling up their nets and finding them chewed to threads. Then they started finding headless eels and catching clams and mussels with their meat already devoured. The blue crab was to blame. In just a few years, these invasive crustaceans, which can lay 2 million eggs annually and have no natural predators in Italy, rapidly spread. Now, crabs are actively destroying clams and mussels. In the summer of 2023, they ate more than half of the clams and mussels harvested in the country. Naturally, this couldn't be left unchecked, and people decided to declare war on the blue crabs. The Italian government came up with a plan to gradually eliminate the enemy and allocated 2.9 million euros to help fishermen and fight the invasion. Now, Italians are turning the invasive crabs into a culinary delicacy, adding them to risotto, pasta, salads. Well, Italians have always known how to make great delicacies, but the scope of blue crab catching is still impressive. In August, for instance, they reported that 300 tons were caught in one spot. In other places, it was less, 84 tons, 29 tons. Basically, in Antarctica, they're wiping out crabs by the millions. Hold on, the observant viewer will wonder, what's Antarctica got to do with any of this? Did you confuse Antarctica and the Adriatic? Nope. The thing is, a similar situation is about to happen in Antarctica, and there won't be any people there to deal with the invasion. Actually, crabs have already spread across the whole world, and so far Antarctica has been the only exception. And in all parts of the world, crabs are one of the main predators of the seabed. Their strong, crushing claws are deadly for snails, fragile starfish, and other slow-moving animals, and there are lots of crabs, a lot of them. This is what Christmas Island looks like when 120 million crabs leave the forests and migrate to the shore to breed. And here are the shallow waters of Australia, where thousands of other crabs come together for a mass molting. And here's Cuba. This is exactly what its roads look like when millions of crabs decide to migrate. Invasive and non-invasive, but crabs are everywhere, except Antarctica. Crabs haven't lived in the shallow waters of Antarctica for at least 16 million years. Why? Well, crabs might be happy to add another achievement to their list, but the cold has stopped them. When the continent split from South America 40 million years ago, it led to the creation of the circumpolar ocean current, which isolated Antarctica from warmer air and water masses. The current encircles the continent, keeping it icy. And this is actually a very interesting phenomenon, but we'll talk about it some other time. The important thing is that this current, like the wall from Game of Thrones, protected Antarctica from crabs for millions of years. Its water is just too cold. And it's not that the crabs get cold on the way, there's magnesium in the seawater. I mean, there's magnesium in all seas and oceans, but when the water is moderately warm, crabs naturally absorb the magnesium into their blood and can control its level. In very low temperatures, the ability to control it is lost, and the magnesium builds up and acts like an anesthetic. It looks like they get very intoxicated. Crabs become clumsy, as if they've been given anesthesia, but it hasn't fully kicked in yet. In the end, this leads to the crab's death, and the Antarctic waters stay free from these creatures. If you're curious about how other creatures handle icy waters, scientists have an answer. Most of the 100 fish species inhabiting the Antarctic shelf belong to one suborder, which has developed antifreeze proteins. With these proteins, fish do not freeze even when the water temperatures range from 30 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. But if everything is so cool, safe, and cold in Antarctica, why are scientists now talking about an impending invasion? It's because of climate change. Temperatures are rising across the planet, and Antarctica, although it's off to the side from the other continents, is also warming up. Moreover, the sea temperature in Antarctica is rising faster than anywhere else. Over the past 50 years, waters off the western part of the Antarctic Peninsula, that piece of land resembling a tail, have warmed by about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. This is nearly double the global average. And with rising temperatures, animals that haven't been in these places for millions of years are starting to make their way there. Really, why waste any time? Everything is heading towards the water temperature around Antarctica reaching a point where crabs can tolerate it. True, blue crabs, which they're battling in Italy, shouldn't hold their breath just yet, but nearby in warmer waters there are king crabs, a family of decapod crustaceans that includes the red king crab, for instance. So they used to hang out in the depths without causing trouble, but it's getting warmer and the king crabs are moving up. Normally, they live at depths between 5,900 and 9,000 feet, and they started moving upwards back in 2007. Right now, it's already warm enough for king crabs to survive on the edge of the continental shelf at depths ranging from 1,300 to 1,400 feet. But wait, isn't shallow water warmer than deeper water? I mean, water works absolutely the same everywhere. Yeah, except off the western coast of Antarctica, where the crab invasion is about to happen. Everything's the opposite. Converging ocean currents and ice melting near the ocean surface make the shallows around Antarctica much colder than the deeper waters. At the same time, warmer water comes from the north, and since it's also saltier and denser, this water sinks below the cooler waters, deeper down. Turns out that the shallow waters above the Antarctic continental shelf are generally very cold. Just a bit further from the shore beyond the continental slope, the waters warm up slightly, and then as they get deeper, they start cooling again. The usual logic is working again. Oh, remember I mentioned the year 2007 when scientists first noticed crabs in that area? In 2010, they decided to find out how many king crabs had already moved closer to the continental shelf, and unexpectedly, there were already several thousand of them. Mostly they were Paralomus biersteini, and the population was clearly stable. Anyway, Antarctica is a really unusual place. But global warming is global warming. It affects everyone. Some scientists are already predicting that king crabs will reach the continental shelf in 20 years, around 2043, and nothing will be able to stop them. There are no obstacles like salinity levels, types of seabed deposits, or lack of food. Conditions are absolutely ideal. All that's needed is to slightly increase the water temperature. And even though the invasion hasn't really kicked off, it's already doing damage. In 2011, massive crabs over 3 feet wide invaded the Antarctic basin and wiped out the local wildlife. It's the Neolithodus yaldwini species, and over 1 million of these crabs have already taken over the basin on the Antarctic Peninsula continental shelf. Sea urchins, sea lilies, sea cucumbers, starfish, all these creatures disappeared when crabs arrived, and the total number of species in invaded territories is only a quarter of what it used to be. And as if devouring everything around them wasn't enough, crabs also disturbed the deposits on the seabed of the basin, digging up worms and other creatures, and this is not the kind of change that benefits the habitat of other animals. Such an impact isn't positive at all. And this is just one basin, and one species. By the way, what species should one be wary of? I mean, sure, they're king crabs, but what about specifics? Well, it turns out figuring that out's damn hard. Scientists needed to catch a few crabs in a place that's under threat just to feel somewhat certain, and that's deep, cold, and overall unpleasant conditions. Good thing they've already invented reliable underwater cameras. At least that way you could tell where to go fishing. One thing can be said with certainty. The appearance of king crabs is really bad news for Antarctica because some of them grow huge. Imagine a crab with legs spanning 5 feet. That's like the height of someone's younger sister. The bigger the crab, the more it eats. That's natural. Moreover, such a crab can indulge in a very diverse menu, and that's really not good for the unique Antarctic underwater ecosystems. King crabs, like lobsters, rays, certain types of fish, and modern sharks, hunt by breaking the shells of their prey, and Antarctic animals have absolutely no defense against this tactic. On one hand, well, it's wild nature. It's tough, can't handle the predator, you're done. But on the other, creatures living on the continental shelf of Antarctica aren't found anywhere else on Earth, at all. Yet they've managed to strike a perfect balance in their little ecosystem, living side by side and hardly bothered by predators that could mess up that balance. This has been going on for millions of years. The cold keeps these creatures safe from most predators. And when it's cold, defensive mechanisms kind of become unnecessary. This means one thing. When king crabs move to the shelf, they'll find a luxurious buffet of invertebrates. Anything in their path becomes a tasty treat requiring zero effort to eat. There are no hard shells to crack for their prey. The animals there have thin shells, soft bodies, and lightweight skeletons. You can just eat them. You don't even have to be a crab with powerful claws. You can take an Antarctic clam and crush it with your hands. Just in case, don't do it. But the fact remains, shallow water marine communities in Antarctica are vastly different from marine communities elsewhere in the world. However, all these ecosystems resemble super ancient seas where familiar predators simply didn't exist. The Antarctic continental shelf is dominant by filter feeders, marine animals that sit on the surface of mud or sand and catch particles for food. That's it. Throw a crab in there, poor things can't even escape. Basically, that's why some scientists call these marine communities archaic and retrograde. They haven't survived anywhere else in the world because they simply shouldn't be able to survive in modern times, because our modern times are full of crabs. So here's the question. Maybe there's something we can do about it. In reality, when the king crabs wound up on the Antarctic slope, some fishermen started wanting to head down to Antarctica because catching such prey is a highly profitable business. But Antarctica is Antarctica. Icy waters and dangerous logistics make fishing incredibly challenging. To get an idea of what it's like, take a look at these shots. It's the show The Deadliest Catch, which shows real life on fishing boats catching crabs in the Bering Sea. Looks tough? Well, in Antarctica, it's much worse. Though, of course, king crabs are essentially invasive, which means they need to be fought against, and fought against seriously, possibly even by exterminating thousands of them, but overall, nobody knows how to solve this problem. Every option is difficult, except maybe the option, stop ocean warming. This one's not just difficult, it's damn difficult. Although people are trying to do something about that. If the king crabs do indeed colonize these waters, they might attract some predators like the Antarctic toothfish, Weddell seals, and elephant seals. Maybe they'll even be thrilled to have such a great crab meat restaurant around. Alas, besides content predators, we face the loss of unique ecosystems unlike anything else in the modern world. The continental shelf of Antarctica will become ordinary. Yes, perhaps that's the most fitting word. But don't rush to blame everything on crabs. Global warming will bring other dangers to the Antarctic seabed. Many species there are extremely sensitive to temperature increases and may slowly suffocate if the conditions around them change. Well, crabs will just finish them off. Scientists also have an interesting viewpoint. In a sense, the king crabs are remodernizing the marine community of Antarctica. Right now, the seabed near the continent doesn't resemble the seabed of any other place on Earth. With the arrival of king crabs, Antarctica's continental shelf will start to resemble the continental shelves at lower latitudes. On one hand, it seems like no big deal. So there were two different patches of seabed that looked different, and now they'll look the same. Is that even a problem? But actually, yes, it is a problem. Loss of biodiversity is bad from both ethical and aesthetic points of view because Antarctica is really unique, and the changes won't just affect Antarctica. It might sound weird, but losing unique clams living in this area now could threaten other organisms that help fight cancer. Seriously. Sea squirts, for example, produce a substance that could be used in skin cancer treatment. So if crabs eat these mollusks, it could eventually stop the relevant research of pharmaceutical companies. Losing cancer treatment? That sounds serious and makes sense to everyone, even if someone doesn't care about some biodiversity on Antarctica's continental shelf. If you've finished watching, don't be lazy to hit the like button. See you later.